Good morning. We begin with the race that everyone is watching, not just here in Texas, but in D.C. and other places as well. Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke. We're spending time with both candidates as we close in on Election Day. This morning, Cruz is up first, sitting down with me and Bud Kennedy from the Star-Telegram. Senator, thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Good to be with you.
Let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh. You've talked a lot about fairness and hearing out the allegations fully. But women are likely to decide this election. There are a lot of women who can relate to Dr. Ford. What's your message to those women?
Well, I think it was very important that Dr. Ford be given a full and fair opportunity to tell her story, and that she be treated with respect when she did so. And that's what happened. That's what the Judiciary Committee did. I urged my colleagues we needed to give her that public hearing. I think it was also very important that Judge Kavanaugh be given a fair and full opportunity to defend himself. And I think he should have been treated with respect as well. And sadly, that didn't happen. We saw Senate Democrats falling all over themselves to play political games, really to try to drag Judge Kavanaugh and his family through the mud. I think it was profoundly unfair what they did to Judge Kavanaugh. I also think it was profoundly unfair what Senate Democrats did to Dr. Ford. Dr. Ford submitted her allegations to Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat on the committee, on July 30th, and she asked, keep these confidential. And the testimony we heard last week is that the Democrats deliberately sat on it for 2 months and then leaked it to the press against Dr. Ford's wishes and ended up dragging her and her family through the mud as well. That was wrong.
But I think it's unclear who leaked it, though, isn't it? I mean, I think Senator Feinstein has said that she didn't leak it, nor her office, but
so according to Dr. Ford, it's not unclear at all. Dr. Ford testified that there were only 4 groups of people that had that letter.
Right.
Herself, her lawyers, Senator Feinstein, and Congresswoman Eshoo, her Democratic congresswoman. Dr. Ford told the Judiciary Committee she didn't leak it and her lawyers didn't leak it. That means the only people who could have leaked it were one of the 2 Democratic members of Congress or their staff. Those are the only people left. And you know, the Judiciary Committee has an entire process set up to handle complaints like this, a confidential process. Here's what should have happened. When those allegations came in on July 30th, Senator Feinstein should have referred it to the full committee, to the chairman of the committee. They should have been referred to the FBI for a background investigation, and we could have conducted a hearing. We actually had a confidential hearing with Judge Kavanaugh where none of the Democrats brought up these allegations because, sadly, they wanted to play politics with them rather than be fair and assess them on the merits. And I think that's the wrong way to approach this.
Let me shift off to politics, Senator. Fundraising for your Senate campaign, you just achieved a record. Congratulations on that. I'm curious, though, too, you still lag behind your opponent. Why do you think he's having better success considering both of you are getting the same amount of money from out of state?
Well, and then that's not clear at all, by the way, because he's not disclosed how many millions he's getting from out of state. So much of his money is small dollars that are coming from Hollywood and all over the country.
Why do you think he's having better success with that, though?
It's not complicated. The extreme left, they're really angry. They're energized by rage and fury and hatred for President Trump. And so what we're seeing in this race is what we're seeing in Democratic races all over the country, which is Democrats are raising massive amounts of money. And, you know, typically in a general election in Texas, a Democrat at least pretends to go to the middle, at least pretends to be a moderate. Beto O'Rourke isn't doing that. He's running hard left like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. So every time he takes a far left position, when he says he is, quote, open to abolishing ICE, that's a radical position, and he raises millions of dollars from across the country, from liberals across the country. When he says he wants to impeach Donald Trump, he's the only Democratic Senate nominee in the country to say that.
Senator, let me
he raises millions from across the country, but that's not Texas.
Let me ask you about that. I mean, he has all this money. What's he doing with it? He hasn't run the typical ads attacking you.
You know, you'd have to ask him what he's doing with it. He's spending it on a lot of things. One of the things that's been reported, I guess he spent about $4 million in yard signs. That explains why you see yard signs everywhere. $4 million buys a ton of yard signs. We don't have $4 million to spend on yard signs. But what we do have is enough money to ensure that this election focuses on issues and substance and record. That is how I've approached every campaign, is on issues and substance and what the people of Texas care about.
I want to ask you, one of the things that you've criticized him for is talking about law enforcement as Jim Crow. But some of your supporters believe in criminal justice reform. They say it's needed. You know, what's your message there? Do you believe in criminal justice reform?
Well, listen, criminal justice reform is very important. I've been a longtime supporter of lessening mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug offenders. I've helped lead the effort to do that. Now, I draw a big line between nonviolent and violent. I don't think we should be letting murderers and rapists and violent criminals out.
But this discussion is about taking away the life and liberty of people who may not, have committed a crime.
But let me point out something more broadly. What Beto O'Rourke has done consistently is demonize and attack police officers. So a couple of weeks ago, he gave a speech where he described police officers as, quote, the new Jim Crow. And he specified what it was he was accusing police officers of doing. He said they were searching, stopping, and shooting people solely because of their race. Now, Bud, that is offensive. It is offensive, it is divisive, and it's wrong. It's dividing us on race. And there are thousands of police officers in the state of Texas who are African American or Hispanics.
Some of your own supporters say that's true and that the justice system needs reform.
I can tell you that I am proud to stand with the men and women of law enforcement, and I think this approach of attacking cops, of accusing them of being racist, it's not responsible. You know, we saw just this week 7 police officers shot in Florence, South Carolina, and that kind of hateful rhetoric contributes to an environment where police officers effectively have a target on their back. The law should be applied fairly with regard to everyone, regardless of race, but demonizing cops, calling them racists, I think is really wrong, and I think Congressman O'Rourke should stop that kind of divisive rhetoric.
Senator, let me ask you about the TV commercial you have running now. It talks about chaos at the border, and I'm curious about that word you used in there, because Republicans in Congress, since President Trump was elected, have spent hundreds of millions of dollars down there. As you know, the Texas legislature spent almost $1 billion on state troopers. Using the word chaos suggests to me that none of that might be working.
Well, there is a reason that we are not having greater success securing the border, and that is congressional Democrats are filibustering anything to actually provide resources to build a wall, to secure the border. I have, from the day I've been elected, led the effort to make the border safer and more secure. It's one of the reasons why I've received the formal endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council, the union of the men and women who risk their lives keeping the border safe. And right now, Democrats like Beto O'Rourke, like Senate Democrats, are filibustering any effort to provide resources to strengthen law enforcement and actually stop violent criminals from coming into this country.
Senator, it sounds like to me, though, that just throwing money at it is not the solution. Republicans have been throwing money at it from Congress to Austin, throwing money at it, trying to fix it. If you're saying it's chaos down there, throwing money at it's not the solution.
But Jason, you're actually wrong. The federal government hasn't thrown money at it because Democrats have filibustered efforts to provide those resources. So we're not able to appropriate because Democrats killed them. But here, if you want to understand this issue, let me give a very simple contrast. Kate's Law. I am the author of Kate's Law in the Senate. It is common sense legislation that says violent criminals, aggravated felons who repeatedly enter the country illegally, who are repeatedly deported, should face mandatory minimum prison sentences. If Kate's Law had been on the books, Kate Steinle, beautiful young woman murdered by a repeat violent criminal, she'd still be alive. I'm the author of Kate's Law. Beto O'Rourke has voted against Kate's Law. Now, that's an example where the overwhelming majority of Texans, not just Republicans, independents, Democrats, support common sense legislation like Kate's Law, but the Washington Democrats, like Beto O'Rourke, are so extreme they're blocking that legislation.
We have about 45 seconds left. Last question.
Well, Senator, back to the campaign. You know, we talk about Tarrant County being one of the reddest counties in America. You haven't been there much. I mean, what's your plan? And they lost the $1 billion Trinity River Plan funding. Do you support that? What do you have for Tarrant County?
You know, we have been all over the state. In the last 4 weeks, we've done, I think, 25 town halls all over the state of Texas. We have been in East Texas, West Texas, the Panhandle, North Texas, Central Texas, the Hill Country, the Gulf Coast. Our campaign is driven by the grassroots men and women of this state, and Texans know what works. We know low taxes, low regulations. It's producing record low unemployment. And here's a stat that everyone should think about. Right now today, we have the lowest Hispanic unemployment that has ever been recorded, and we have the lowest African American unemployment that has ever been recorded. Low taxes and low regulations works, and we need to not go back to the failed economic policies of the Obama administration.
Senator Cruz, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So no doubt Ted Cruz is trying to shore up support campaigning Wednesday in Wichita Falls with Donald Trump Jr. You know, Mike Pence is coming to Dallas tomorrow. campaigning with Pete Sessions. Republicans clearly concerned about an energized Democratic Party in this state, but not all Texas officials, especially GOP ones, are benefiting from those high-profile endorsements. Ian Mitra is in for Ross Ramsey this morning at the Texas Tribune. Good morning to you, Ian.
Good morning.
You know, one Texas Republican who's made a lot of headlines over the last 4 years hasn't been getting a lot of endorsements. It's Ag Commissioner Sid Miller. Why not?
Well, you know, there's a lot of trade associations that have been making endorsements up and down the Republican list, and several of them have not endorsed Sid Miller. You know, a lot of them are saying they want to remain neutral, or they don't have a dog in the hunt in the ag commissioner's race. But then, you know, with Sid Miller's history, he's been the subject of a couple of investigations, and you know, his Facebook page has been kind of called out for posting fake news. It's just raising some questions. You know, from Sid Miller's point of view, he doesn't want to be part of the, you know, Texas, you know, the Austin lobby industry. That's how his spokesman referred to it. So he's relying on his ag group endorsements and going from there.
And he has been quiet on Twitter lately as well, too. Let me shift off to another story that you guys are watching in Austin. State Senator Charles Schwertner accused of sexually harassing a UT student. This is heating up. Schwertner took a lie detector test. UT now hiring a former federal prosecutor to investigate. How's this going to end up?
Yeah, so to be clear, he's accused of, the inquiry is around some text messages that have been sent to a UT student, some lewd messages. Senator Schwertner has denied this. He says they were not sent from him. There's an investigation going on at UT. They've recently hired, apparently, a former federal prosecutor to look into it. For his part in this, Schwertner has denied this. He's taken a polygraph test, and it said that everything he answered was factual. He's actually calling for the dismissal of the officials at UT who leaked this. There's no state Senate investigation. This is primarily a UT investigation as of now, and UT's not commenting about it because they don't want to. They say they want to protect the integrity of the investigation. So it's a lot more still to come on this.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for the clarification too, Ian. Back to you in just a moment, sir. You know, equal justice under the law is engraved on the front of the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., but in Tarrant County, is it really being applied? Ed Gray from the Commish Radio Show argues his point in My Voice, My Opinion.
We will soon go to the polls to vote. However, in Tarrant County, we create political prisoners, such as Crystal Mason. Ms. Mason mistakenly believed that she could vote. Ms. Mason's provisional vote wasn't even counted. Meanwhile, a Republican Tarrant County Justice of the Peace pleaded guilty to voter fraud, got probation, and then walked free. Voter suppression leads to voter apathy. We must not sentence black and brown voters to jail time for voting. We must not have Republican candidates on the ballot, as we do in Dallas County, after suspected voter fraud. There is no judicial fairness when Crystal Mason is sentenced to prison for a provisional vote and judges guilty of voter fraud are set free. Texas, we must free our mind. We must free Crystal Mason, and democracy will follow. I'm Ed Gray, and this is My Voice, My Opinion.
Lots of Texas Republicans clearly concerned about re-election next month. We have a veteran political consultant in studio to tell us who might be in trouble.
Is home improvement shopping cleaning you out? You won't feel that way at Seconds and Surplus. With discounts of up to 50 to 90% on the latest home improvements, you can hold on to more of your money.
Come one, come all for bargains galore under the big top and inside both stores. It's the gigantic fall tent sale at Freed's Furniture. Every item is on sale. There's so much great furniture, we needed the tent to display it all. Big savings on living rooms, dining rooms, bedrooms, mattress sets, and fine Oriental and area rugs from famous brands like Bernhardt, Magnuson, Pulaski, Sealy, Serta, Tempur-Pedic, Universal, and many others. Astounding savings, plus everything is available for immediate pickup or delivery during the gigantic fall tent sale at Freed's Furniture.
The XT5 reviews are in. Get this low mileage lease on this 2018 Cadillac XT5 from around $379 per month. Visit your local Cadillac dealer.
At Scottish Rite Hospital, we're world-renowned for healing muscles, joints, and bones. so kids' bodies can move as freely as their spirits. Each year, we care for thousands of patients like Olivia who have scoliosis, a curvature of the spine that can be life-threatening. Every day, our pediatric orthopedic experts are giving children back their childhood.
My story isn't about the father who wasn't there. It's about the mom who was. She taught in Dallas public schools, worked a second job to make ends meet. With her support and the help of the Town North YMCA, I made it to Baylor and the NFL and became a civil rights lawyer. Now, I'm running for Congress because we need new leadership in Washington. I'll be an independent voice for North Texas, not a party-line politician. I'm Colin Allred, and I approve this message.
Don't miss the Texas Appliance Columbus Day sales event.
Texas Appliance is the largest independent, locally owned appliance dealer in North Texas,
where you'll always find a great selection and the best prices guaranteed.
Plus, our salespeople are the very best in the business. So shop Texas Appliance today and save up to $1,600 with the KitchenAid Culinary Ambition promotion.
Shop where the builders shop and save during the Columbus Day sales event at Texas Appliance.
Now you're cooking.
Does home improvement shopping feel like flushing your money down the toilet? You won't feel that way at Seconds and Surplus. With discounts of up to 50 to 90% on the latest home improvements, you can hold on to more of your money.
If Republicans weren't worried about getting reelected next month, you wouldn't see Mike Pence, Donald Trump Jr., and Paul Ryan, among others, campaigning here. But which candidates are really in trouble? It's a question all of us ask, and one we are posing this morning to Matt Mackowiak, the president of the Potomac Strategy Group. Good to see you again, man.
Great to be here.
First big question, is Ted Cruz in trouble?
So the race is clearly more competitive than I think the Cruz team would want. If you look at the presidential election in Texas, Trump's margin was 8.5 or 9%. Generally, you would hope that Cruz would be in that range as well. You have had some polling in the last month or so that has showed the race far closer than that, even right near the margin of error. A lot of that polling, I think, has been pretty suspect. It's been testing registered voters, not likely voters. The Quinnipiac poll tested likely voters. It was the first one to do so. It took the margin to 7. Look, O'Rourke has raised an enormous amount of money. When the race was about personalities, he was making up ground. With the first debate, the race got away from personalities and went to issues. That's where Cruz has an advantage, can make the case about Beto being outside the mainstream on key things, sanctuary cities, open to abolishing ICE, $32 trillion Medicare for all, those kinds of impeaching Trump. Those are not majority views in Texas. But look, this is a competitive race. O'Rourke has unprecedented resources for a candidate like him in a tough state like this. But Cruz, I think, is surging now on some of this backlash to the Kavanaugh story.
Does it benefit Beto O'Rourke not to debate?
So that's what's really interesting. It's a fascinating question because if you remember, O'Rourke called on to having debates, then Cruz put a proposal together for 5, as you know, better than anyone, and then Beto basically wouldn't sort of agree at the end to do the first 2, and then they agreed to do 3, and of course one of them got canceled because of Senate votes.
Right.
So it could, look, I think if Beto thinks he's ahead, he shouldn't debate. But they did do the first debate. They would have done the second had there not been Senate votes. They still have at least one more, and maybe they'll reschedule the second one. So, look, O'Rourke, to me, the thing that puzzles me is I don't see him with a path to victory. He's not doing the kinds of things he needs to do to win 3/4 of the independents, which is what it's going to take to win a statewide election in Texas as a Democrat.
Even with 55,000 people out there at the concert with Leon Bridges and Willie Nelson down in Austin.
Yeah, and that's Austin, right? I mean, one of my favorite sayings that I often say is the great thing about Austin is its proximity to Texas. So Austin is not representative of Texas politically, right? The fact you can get a big crowd in Austin doesn't mean that you're going to win in those suburban counties, that you're going to drive margins in other places. Look, to win statewide O'Rourke, to break that streak of not winning a statewide since 1994, he needs massive Democratic turnout, but then he also needs 3/4 of the independents and 10% of the Republicans, and he needs all 3 of those things to have a chance.
Let me ask you, Matt, about Pete Sessions and Colin Allred. What do you think that's going to end up like?
Yeah, close race, no question. I was in Dallas just the last few nights, and I've seen several of Sessions' ads. Have not seen Allred's ads on the channels I was watching. Sessions is getting a lot of help. He's in a powerful position, as you know, as Rules Committee Chair. It's one of the most powerful positions in Congress. Allred has raised pretty good money for a challenger. He also, I think, much like O'Rourke, is running as a progressive. He's kind of talking like a moderate, but his issues are fairly progressive. Yeah. So that's created enthusiasm and allowed him to raise money, but I think it's going to prevent him from having a path to victory. That said, Sessions is getting a lot of help. The vice president coming here tomorrow, you go down the list, he's getting a lot of help, and that's because it's an important seat.
Final seconds, who loses? Which incumbent loses?
Great question. The one who I think is at biggest risk right now is State Senator Don Huffines in Dallas County of the Republicans. There's 6 or 8 that I would say that are at real risk. There are maybe a couple state rep races that are probably over. But Don Huffines, because he's in Dallas County, because Dallas County could be a bloodbath for Republicans if we're not careful, I would say watch him closest.
All right, Matt Mackowiak from Potomac Strategy Group, a GOP consulting firm. Thank you very much, Matt. Good to see you again.
Pleasure.
A week from Tuesday is the next and potentially final debate in the Cruz-Beto race. What might we see, though? It's where the fireworks began on Flashpoint. From the right, Mark Davis of 660 AM The Answer, and from the left, author and producer Katie Sheridan.
Thanks. Good Sunday morning, everybody. Well, we're here in the middle of election season. We got Cruz and Beto on a debate stage, and they're saying things to each other, and everybody's saying things about them. So I figured Katie and I would say some things about it. All the news is about blue wave and all the passion on your side to get. Beto's got all the signs, and he's even up by 1 in a poll. I just want to suggest to you that there's going to be a red backstop to the blue wave, because for every Beto voter who thinks they can take him out, there's a Cruz voter who says we're not going to let that happen.
I think that some of the Cruz voters are going, ugh, he's not exactly making himself really attractive to people. And we've even seen pictures of him looking at Beto on his own phone, which is pretty wonderful.
Cruz voters say
this? And I also love the fact that they're putting out ads that make Beto look like the coolest thing going. So it's like, thank you, Republicans. Thank you, Ted. I think Ted is his own worst enemy. And you know, Beto, he's got it. He's got the platform. He's got the position.
Does he have the? Well, he's a great-looking guy. He does well. He has a campaign skill set.
As opposed to
very nice man. And
Ted Cruz, the lizard.
Cruz may not. Oh, wow. For 20.
I would bet on Beto if I were you.
For 24 years, we've been a solid red state. What makes you think that's going to change?
Because he is within 1 point. I'd say that's a sign of change.
From the right, Mark Davis, 660 AM The Answer.
And from the left, Katie Sheridan.
A Republican senator is backing Democrats running against 2 of his GOP colleagues. I'll ask what's at play next on the Roundtable.
Howdy, folks.
Don't miss the biggest celebration in the Lone Star State this fall in Dallas. Buy your State Fair of Texas tickets, food, and ride coupons online and save big at the all-new BigTex.com. September 28th through October 21st in Fair Park.
If you haven't shopped with free shipping, a free gift, and 30-month financing at Nebraska Furniture Mart, don't miss this weekend. Get free shipping with qualifying purchase, interest-free financing for 30 months if paid in full by April 2021, and get a free tote bag with qualifying purchase. Plus, find free offers throughout the store, free installation, free gift cards, free carpet pad, even a free sink. Get free shipping, a free gift, and more this weekend at Nebraska Furniture Mart.
Who knew?
Yeah. So you're with the UPS store?
Yes. In fact, we printed these right here.
Oh, I thought you guys just did shipping.
No, we do printing, packing, faxing, notarizing, shredding, mailboxing, copying, taping, binding, consulting, designing, returning, storing, grading. Oh, and of course, shipping.
So you're into shipping?
We also do printing, packing, faxing.
Come into the UPS store today for everything your small business needs. And of course, shipping.
Nancy Pelosi's going all in for Colin Allred, bankrolling his campaign with thousands in campaign donations. For Pelosi, Allred's a sure bet, loyal and liberal. Allred wants a federal government takeover of healthcare, $32 trillion in new spending, almost doubling the debt, taxing Texans to pay for it. And Allred backed the dangerous Iranian nuclear deal, handing billions to Iran. Colin Allred, too liberal for Texas. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Few others on Earth can rival the strength of an ant relative to its size. Until now. The new 2018 GMC Terrain has arrived. Terrain, the powerful compact SUV from GMC.
Step up to GMC with 13% below MSRP on this 2018 Terrain SLT. That's nearly $5,000 below MSRP on this Terrain.
Time for a change? Bring in your gently used current fashions, shoes, handbags, and accessories to Clothes Mentor and receive cash on the spot. Clothes Mentor buys all major styles, brands, and looks for all your changing ways. So whether the season changes, your job changes, or you just change your mind, bring in your items to Clothes Mentor to put some cash in your pocket. Change is fun when you shop at Clothes Mentor. Clothes Mentor. Like the look, love the price.
Howdy, folks.
Don't miss the biggest celebration in the Lone Star State this fall in Dallas. Buy your State Fair of Texas tickets, food and ride coupons online, and save big at the all-new BigTex.com. September 28th through October 21st in Fair Park.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley on WFAA.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Bud and Ian are back. Ross and Bernadine have this week off. Bud, let's start with you and what's happening tomorrow here in Dallas. Vice President Mike Pence coming to campaign for Pete Sessions. Sessions has already had Speaker Paul Ryan here, former Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. Is this really going to drive Republicans to the polls, energize that base?
Sessions really needs every Republican in that district to come out. He's in a tough race with Colin Allred. You know, he came out this week in favor of keeping coverage for pre-existing conditions. Allred has been hurting him on health care.
Ian, what do you think about this? Does Allred still have a crack at this? This is going to be a close race, no doubt.
This is absolutely going to be a close race. You can look at a lot of the, Cook's Political Reporter, a lot of the analysis and is seeing it as as close to a toss-up. And so, that's why Sessions is going to need to benefit from these visits because it's going to stay tight.
Bud, let me ask you real quickly about this too before we move on. President Obama backed Allred. We haven't seen any big names coming in here to gin up all these support on the Democratic side. Why not?
It's all the blue base, and it's a lot of the Beto coattails. Colin is one of the people who is really getting a lot of backing out of the Beto crowd. A lot of the Democrats around the state wish they could get some of that help.
Let me ask you also too, Bud, and we'll switch off to Ian, about former State Senator Bob Deuel from Greenville. He served 12 years in the state Senate. He wrote one of the big abortion bills as well too. But he is now backing Don Huffines' Democratic opponent. How big of a deal is this, and what's driving that?
Nathan Johnson is more attuned to the district. Bob Deuel is backing both Huffines' opponent and Bob Hall's opponent. He says Democrats are better, that the Republicans in those districts, Huffines is a Libertarian Ron Paul Republican, Hall is a Tea Party Republican. Deuel says the Democrats would be better for East Texas.
And Ian, does this suggest a split at all in the party, in the GOP, or is this just an individual isolated case?
Well, Deuel had a very difficult primary in 2014 when he lost to Bob Hall. And in his statement endorsing Johnson, he specifically mentioned, conservative scorecards, and he also mentioned, that the people in these races, Huffines, Hall. He even mentioned Connie Burton. He just really kind of felt like there wasn't service being done in North Texas by these representatives. So it just kind of reflects that there is a rift there.
Bud, 10 seconds left. Does Huffines win?
Huffines is the closest race we've got. All the Beto voters may sweep Huffines out.
All right, good deal. Bud and Ian, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. And thank you for watching as well. ABC's This Week begins in just a moment right here on Channel 8. We'll see you again next Sunday. Hope you have a good week.